Hi. Well, I want to first say hi. I'm Christi Cooke with JP and Associates Realtors, and we'd like to welcome everyone today. I hope everyone has been staying safe and well at home these past 6 weeks. I don't know if we're all going crazy yet, but are ready to get out. But I know, of course, we all want to do it, and be safe about it. But these last few weeks, I've had a lot of people talk to me about home improvement projects. And so I thought, what a great way to address this. But as we know, selling your home, there's some major factors. 1 is price, 2 is location, 3 is condition. And I was in a class last week that it stated over 30% of US households would be doing some sort of home improvement project in the last 12 months. So I thought that we should bring in a local expert and designer here to talk to us about adding value to our homes. So Lisa Landry is the owner of Landry Designs, and it was an award-winning design firm that was founded in 1997. She and her team love working with local homeowners and business owners to increase the values of their properties. In doing so, they find that they can actually transform not only the spaces they design, but the lives of those who spend time in those spaces. Lisa's going to talk to us today about upcoming trends, design rules of thumb, and how to add value to your real estate. But before I turn it over to her, I also want to introduce my own amazing real estate team that are on here. Molly Sponsler, Tina Fuller-Jones, Kevin Ickes. I'm not sure he was able to get on. I was having poor reception in Oklahoma today. If we can ever answer any questions or help you with any real estate needs, please let us know. During Lisa's presentation, if you guys have any questions, at the bottom of the screen, there's a chat. So please type in your questions, and I'm going to be monitoring that, and so that we can have a question and answer at the end of Lisa. So without further ado, Lisa Landry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here and see all of your faces. And this is the time where I think we all need to come together and work together on fun projects. So I wanted to go ahead and share my screen right now. And let me open up this presentation and put it in present mode and let that load for just a sec. And then we'll go over what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so welcome everyone again. This presentation we're calling Adding Value with Design, and we're going to go over lots of trends, which is fun. So our agenda for today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. We're going to talk about color and design trends for 2020 and beyond. We're going to talk about how to add value to your own real estate, which I think is great at this time. Look at a lot of before and afters, and then have our Q&A session at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about our team. We're called Landry Designs, and we call ourselves the Landry team. I founded the company in 1997, like Christi mentioned. We have 12 team members working out of a 12,000 square foot studio in Arlington, Texas. We do commercial, multifamily, residential, and staging design. We've been honored to win 35 international design awards judged by magazine editors from across the country. We've had our design work published nationally 28 times now, and that's always super fun for homeowners and business owners to see their property featured in a publication. We've been voted the best interior designer by local residents for the past 7 years in a row. And that's how long the contest has been around, and we're just always knocking on wood that we'll win again, but we're very thankful for those votes. We've designed and decorated 30 plus multifamily projects also, which are apartment communities. Those are always really great and exciting to work on. And we've started doing projects nationwide. We really only ever worked in Texas until about a year ago. And now we're getting projects further and further away, and we can design virtually and then just go do our installation and big reveal in person. So it's allowed us to do projects nationwide. So just a brief overview of how we work with clients in case you ever need anything. We have something called an Easy Transform My Space system with 3 simple steps. The first step is collaborate, and that's where we really get to know the client and what their priorities are, what their budget range is, what they want to do in what order, kind of develop a master plan. We do project sizes from the smallest thing, just like lamps, all the way to full room projects. We do not have a minimum or maximum project size. So we collaborate to really get to know the client. Then we work on the designs and present to the client so that they can pick really their favorites. We always give options so that the space really looks like the client when it's finished and not just their designer. And then the final step is installation and what we call the big reveal. And on big reveal day, we have the client leave their home or be out of that area if it's a business. And we show up with a whole team of people, install everything, make sure everything's perfect, and then have you close your eyes and see the big reveal. So that's like the most fun day. So here's just an example of a big reveal day before and after. This is a local Mansfield homeowner, and actually Arlington, this property is in Arlington. This is the after of her space. So we can take something from, new construction, which is what this was, and completely furnish it so that it looks like you've lived there a while already. It's already comforting and inviting to come home to. This is a good example of what we're seeing right now. Still using lots of neutrals for the design trends and accenting with strong color. So we are seeing lots and lots of color still going forwards, but neutral is always easy to live with and you don't get tired of it. And let's say 5 years down the road, you wanted to change your art or you wanted to change your pillows or you wanted to change your accessories. It's not so hard to do then when everything else is pretty neutral. So that's a good trend that we're still seeing going forward. The other thing that I'd mention here to notice is mid-level lighting. We've got 2 lamps here in this space, and that provides mid-level lighting versus overhead lighting. So what we find is with overhead lighting, it casts shadows on your face and makes you look older and tired, which nobody needs. And then it also just casts shadows on whatever you're trying to do. So mid-level lighting is very helpful to make a space feel cozy and inviting and light the room properly. We're always looking for spaces to add additional lighting at mid-level instead of just overhead. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is really tall ceilings in new construction, and clients have a hard time sometimes figuring out how to place things there and how to fill those spaces. So this is another trick that we use a lot of times. You see how these windows are really low in relation to the height of the ceiling. So mounting these drapery panels, which are these fabric panels on the side, much higher, and then filling that space with a decorative element, fills the void and makes it not look so squatty. It really pulls the eye up then to the top of the ceiling and highlights the architecture that you have. In addition, the art, we want to make sure that the art is to scale for the space that you're using. And that's another tip. If you're doing art on your own, make sure you get big enough pieces of art. In many cases, we see art that's way too small for the space. So trying to fill the space visually without it feeling crowded is something that we always want to be aware of. In addition, the rug, the same way. If the rug is too small, it makes the room feel smaller, because that's another design trick. It's an optical illusion that wherever the rug stops is where the room stops visually. So trying to put the largest rug that will comfortably fit in the space and then not be crowded for traffic pass is the ideal situation. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at just the 2020 color forecast. These are just some room images, color images, paint images that are on trend right now. So you see that there's a varied range of colors. Do you see how all of these colors are very grayed down? They have a grayish undertone. They're very muted. So although the colors are pretty vivid in some cases, just like this magenta or the fuchsia, the rest of them are pretty muted with gray undertones. These are some of the colors that are in the 2020 color forecast from Sherwin-Williams, just so you can see kind of the palette. And do you see how there's a lot of this goldenrod color, kind of lots of yellows and golds? Those are still very strong. We are seeing turquoise and blue, again, very strong. Anything in the blue family is going to be good going forward for a while. But you see a lot of other elements too. There's some greens, some evergreen sort of colors, some natural colors, this pink, we're still seeing some purples. So it's not that any color is good or bad, it's just what tone of that color is on trend. And all of these are relatively grayed down. What we were seeing last year for 2019 was more what we called highlighter colors, and they were extremely intense, like bright yellow like a highlighter, bright lime green like a highlighter, bright hot pink, those sorts of colors. And this year and going forward, we're seeing them muted down some. Okay, so Sherwin-Williams color of the year for 2020 is called Naval, and it's a really, really dark navy. So I'm going to show it to you in a couple of applications. This is a color that is really easy to live with. It's not too strong. Even though it's dark, it can create some drama and some contrast and be great. So the description they're giving of this one is that Naval is an empowering presence that evokes a sense of confidence, a serene shade with a hint of opulence. It works well with polished marble, gleaming metals, soft textures, and sophisticated patterns. So here's some examples. This is an example of it on kitchen cabinetry. So we are seeing cabinetry being painted in many cases. A lot of people have, like, let's say oak cabinets, and they just don't love the color. What we find when you paint those cabinets is that we're getting much more of a clean look. You're losing the grain, the stain like grain, but you're still keeping the architecture of the cabinet. So if the shape of your cabinets is nice, then I think we need to mute somebody.
Yeah, I'm looking.
Okay. Okay. So if the shape of your cabinet doors looks nice, then the color can look great on it. Sometimes we're making the cabinets one color and the islands a different color, but in this case, they were done the same. A lot of people are scared of painting their cabinets. Seems like men in particular are like, oh, I don't want to paint. It's just like such nice wood. And I always just say, well, the wood will still be there. I mean, the cabinets could be stripped if you ever wanted to strip the paint and restain, but it does give you a much more modern, clean look to paint them. We're also seeing a lot of this quartz or marble look that you see on the backsplash here. This is actually a quartz product that looks like marble so that it's not so porous and soft and easier to maintain. We're still seeing a lot of this trend. It's very European looking. We're also seeing gold fixtures. You see these gold light fixtures in residential applications and in high-end commercial. It's something that may need to be replaced more frequently because this trend could be gone, but we are seeing all kinds of metals right now, from brushed gold to bright brass to burnished golds to chrome, brushed nickel, pewter, all kinds of things, bronze, everything almost goes right now. So it's really just what you like. Here's some other applications of the naval color. And you see that the navy looks really good with gold. Gold and white are awesome with it. In addition, opposite on the color wheel to blue is orange. So that means it's a complementary color. So the orange always looks great as a blue accent color. Here's some more navy used in a bedroom. And then you see it also with this goldenrod color that that I was pointing out to you, that we are seeing a lot of the yellow mixed with the navy also. Everything white will draw your eye first. This is another design trick. Whatever's white is where your eye goes. So you know how like when you wear white pants and you feel heavier, but you put on black pants and you feel skinnier? It's because dark colors recede. Your eye goes away from them. So when we're trying to push a wall out to make it seem further away from you, we do a dark color there. Just like in this navy cabinet, this naval cabinet, it pushes that part of the wall away and makes that space feel larger. So it's the opposite of what people think. And it's hard to get their mind around that sometimes when we're in a house or a property that we're walking, that the, lighter colors are nice and we need them for contrast and to highlight certain areas. But if we need to push something away from the eye, we need to go darker. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So let's look at some before and afters now. That's the fun part. Okay, so here's a before of a house that's here in Texas that they had just moved into this house and they brought their furniture with them from their apartment. So we see this frequently where it just is kind of bland looking. They had this cabinet, this armoire on the right that's black, just right in front of a window, which is not ideal. So that's the type of thing you always want to be looking for, whether you're trying to just decorate for your own home or a business or trying to get a property ready to sell, is what architecture is there and how can I highlight it and don't hide architecture that you have. So they were open to rearranging. They were actually even open to restaining these wood floors darker and changing the furniture. So that's what we did. So here's the after. And so what we did here is we put a big rug on top of the space to make the space feel larger. Do you see again how the window treatments are hung much higher than the windows themselves? That creates the optical illusion of more height. Also using vertical panels like this draws the eye straight up. We are still seeing graphic prints being a strong design trend going forward. And you just have to be cautious how you mix the scale of those. So do you see how the rug is a black and white graphic print, but it's a very large scale print? And then the drapery fabric is a much smaller scale. It's not small, it's more of a medium scale, but those look complementary to each other. Also, we took the fireplace and painted it darker, the wall behind the fireplace darker, to really draw, you know, your eye to the fireplace. So that's just a little small trick. Changing your lighting or your ceiling fans to something that's more up to date is a very kind of inexpensive thing to do, but that's the jewelry for the room. So we want to make sure that if you're trying to sell your property, that all of that is updated. People are really wanting to look at properties that look like model homes. They don't want to have to do a lot to them. And if your lighting is very dated, then that's going to be, you know, an X on your checklist when they're looking from property to property, which you don't want. So in this case, the customer did love color and they were going to be living here. It's not a staged property. So we were able to use a lot of color and it's a very inviting space and cozy. They rarely watch TV. They have another family room with a big TV. There is a TV inside this armoire. We moved it off to the side if they want to use it for TV viewing, but mostly they use this as a little lounge. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is a before of a guest bath that had been decorated years before when things were very traditional. And here's the after. So this is another trend that we're seeing where we're taking tile all the way up on walls. And in this case, it was done on this left wall and the back wall and the right wall of the shower. But then beyond that, on the far right side, we used wall covering. And I'll show you a closer up picture of that in just a moment. Whether you do all these walls or not is not required. It's up to you. But we are doing sometimes just maybe the left wall completely, or maybe just a back wall completely in a really interesting tile. So it creates a lot of visual interest and drama and creates some sparkle and some sheen. And being cautious about what color grout you choose, I think, is very important. A lot of people choose grout that's not maybe high enough contrast if they're going for a graphic look. And in this case, we used a really, really like whitish grout to pop it everywhere. We also use different tiles. So on the left is one tile, the back of the shower is a different tile on the top, and then there's that third tile at the bottom that's more of a bricklay type style of brick. Okay, let's go to the next. This is the same bathroom. This is the other side of the room. And I wanted to mention this because people always say, oh, I hate wallpaper. I had wallpaper. I didn't like it. I took it down. I've had grass cloth. I took it down. We've actually not seen wallpaper go away for years. I mean, for the last 20 years, we've been selling wall covering. It's changed the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it, performs. All those kinds of things are different. But it is a place to add some texture. And in this case, we used it as an accent. This is a wall covering that's very natural finish. That's a grass cloth, but it has silver threads running all through it. So it looks modern and interesting and just creates some visual interest in the space. We're also seeing wall covering used just like on the back wall, let's say, of a master bedroom, where you want some drama right behind the bed, or in a dining room, just on one wall, or in an entry on the ceiling, or on a bath in the ceiling. So those are some places that we're seeing it used. The orange, like we mentioned, is still going to be strong for a while. So that's a good accent color to use. Here's a kitchen before, and this is very common when we go into homes that are maybe, 15 years old now, and they're wanting to do some kind of refreshing. We see a lot of this where it just looks like builder grade. It's bland. It's not too exciting. If you want it to look cool and modern and up to date, what can we do? So here's the after. And this is an example of painting the cabinets like we were talking about. In this
Wow.
case, we paint.
Wow,
in
that's
this,
a big difference.
yeah, it is a big difference. We did not change the cabinet, so it was, not a big expense there. We just painted the cabinets, painted them darker gray on the bottom of charcoal, lighter gray on the top. And then on the island, we ended up doing tile all the way around. This is another example of using that white grout so that it really pops. Change the countertop on the island to granite, and change the countertops on the perimeter cabinets to granite also, but a different granite. So we do that in many cases to highlight the island. The other thing that was done here is we used the subway tile on the backsplash. And this is another area that we see people maybe not quite do it right with the grout. If you're using subway tile, you almost always need to use white grout or it doesn't look right. I've seen people do it, unless you're particularly trying to make it not look like subway tile and you just want the sheen of that tile. I've seen people do it with darker grout or grout that matches, and you just don't get the graphic effect that you get with the white. We also added the pendant lights over the island. We are still seeing very oversized lighting. That's just a trend. I mean, let's say it's here for 5 or 10 more years, who knows? But that is an area that is very strong, using super dramatic, oversized lighting in many places actually, but over the island is a great spot for it.
Beautiful room.
Thank you. When you see the bar stools that they had before, do you see how there wasn't any presence to those bar stools? So the scale was off. You have these really high ceilings in this space. We use bar stools with backs so that we could get that visual height. Also, when you have a lot of hard surface space, in this case, this floor was tile that looks like wood, it gets real echoey. So the more upholstery we can add to spaces, that helps with absorbing some of that echo and that, in that space, and makes it feel more cozy and inviting. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is a guest room upstairs of a home that they wanted to kind of turn it into a second master. The parents of the family, the mother in particular, was elderly, and they planned for her to move in with them and her to take the master bedroom downstairs, and they planned to move upstairs. So this was their child's room that went away to college, and they were like, let's make it a second master. So this is what we did. So this is another trend that I want y'all to be aware of, is that you can take just one wall and, put some dramatic color on it, and it looked great. We did a color called Caviar that I use frequently. It's a really soft black from Sherwin-Williams on the back wall, and then really pale gray on the other walls. We decided to leave the ceiling white in this case, and sometimes I don't. Whenever these ceilings are vaulted like this, a lot of times it's better to wrap the color up and over, but we wanted this really graphic effect of black, gray, white, so we left the ceiling white in this case. Another tip is when you have high ceilings like this, you really need to use a higher headboard, a taller headboard, so that the scale looks correct. So this is a custom-made upholstered headboard. Everybody likes these because you can lean back against them when you're in bed to read or whatever, and it's comfy and cozy. This is made of a faux leather, so it doesn't absorb the oils from your skin or your hair. And they can be made in any kind of fabrication, any fabric, any texture, any color. You can pick nail heads to go around it in any color. So those are always fun to do. And those are actually mounted to the wall so they don't move. And then the bed frame is mounted to that. This is another good example of, if this were to be a guest room, we always like something at the end of the bed. This bench is designed perfectly to be able to put luggage on without them putting their luggage on your bed. So to use a bench that's made of some kind of faux leather, again, is great because you can just wipe it off. You don't have to be so careful about it. And that gives them a space without putting it, on your nice bedding. Again, mid-level lighting, like we talked about, is important in this space. I want you to also notice the lamp height of these flanking the bed. This is the thing that we see probably the most frequently. And if you're trying to get your house either ready for sale, or you're staging it, or you just want to live there and it look to scale, we see so frequently that the lamps are too small. I think it's hard sometimes when you're out shopping to find lamps that are big enough to fit your space with these high ceilings. But the goal is that when the light comes out from the lamp, you want the light to come onto your lap when you're sitting in bed so that you can read with it. So if you can get your lighting at that height, you have the right height lamps. So just be aware of that. Okay, this is another one that was a family room that they just moved in, and they actually have small children, and they wanted it to be very kid friendly. They entertain a lot. They love modern. They had these pieces of pop art that you see sitting in front of the fireplace that they really enjoyed and they wanted to keep, but they did not like the big lime green piece that was on the wall. They, some people might like that, but they just didn't like it. They wanted to change it. So we needed to address this above the fireplace. This is a good example of if you have architecture that's there, how do you highlight it and really draw your eye to it? So in this case, there was nothing above the fireplace. These draperies looked too small, like just dinky. The scale is not right in this space. There's actually more windows above this lime green art here. So here's what we did. And so they're a very artsy family. And this is not for everybody. I get it. But it is very dramatic and fun and inviting. And when you have a lot of friends that are coming over for parties and they have kids, it becomes a great zone for entertaining. So we utilized their pop art and we added another piece in between. We put that over the windows. We went back with cornices, which are upholstered wood window treatments above each of the windows. And then we added like chrome nail heads to create a sparkle when you're in the space. So it just sort of goes away. It's not a major factor in the space, but white is what your eye is drawn to. So your eye is drawn to those, and it sort of balances the lighter color around the fireplace that you see over here on the side. So then we added big art above the fireplace to draw your eye all the way up. And that's the other trick, is that many times people don't go up high enough whenever they have great architecture like this. We try to fill that space with just sort of a little breathing room around it. The other trend that we are still seeing strong are these types of chandeliers that you see up here, the Sputnik style light. And anything that has that sort of starburst effect is still very strong going forward. For flooring, they had wood floors throughout most of the downstairs, but they wanted carpet in here for the kids to be able to sit on it and be cozier. So we really have gone away from shag carpets and frisé carpets, and all of those kind of things cause so many allergies that people, tend to shy away from those now. So what we are seeing are flat pattern carpets like this. This was a really high quality carpet, very cushy. We put a really good pad underneath it. That helps absorb sound in a space that's mostly wood floors as well, but it always looks perfect. It's like, you don't have to like vacuum it to get the lines, or it doesn't trap things down inside there, toys and dog hair, or cat hair, all those kinds of things. So these flat pattern carpets are very easy to maintain. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is that same house that we saw earlier with the kitchen that had the upper and lower cabinets, different colors. This is their formal living room attached to that space. And it had just been, 15 or 20 years since they had decorated, and they wanted to update the space. Their style is very traditional though, so we didn't want to go too far beyond their comfort zone. So here's the after. So here we did all neutral, very relaxing. Do you see how just rotating the rug the other direction expands this space? And we used a much bigger rug than they had before, so that the wood perimeter, is around the traffic path area. But when you're in the space, you feel very cozy and it feels cohesive. You feel like you can kind of come in and get comfortable. And then the window treatments, we changed from the top treatments that were here to vertical panels to, again, draw the eye up, but also to help with echo and sound absorption in this high ceiling space. So the more drapery panels you can get in, even if they're just neutral or white or black or whatever, that does help absorb sound and makes it feel cozier in the space. Okay, here's another one. This is a great thought about if you have an extra space, what can you do with it? This customer has it's a detached garage from their house, and they ended up adding on to the top of it, building this whole space on the top of it so that they could entertain there. They're part of a foster family group, and they entertain about once a month with a group that comes that's about 30 people that they might need to entertain. So they thought, well, why don't we just build a space that when we have these events, people could go and enjoy. So here's the after. And so here we did a huge sectional. I mean, it's huge. We designed it to fit the space. and lots of people can hang out there. And if they want to do some kind of presentation on the television, then they can show that on that monitor. We did really neutral around the perimeter, and we matched the draperies to the wall, which is not always the case. But in this case, we did not want those to be the highlight in any way. We just wanted to absorb sound. We also did a flat pattern carpet here. And then we have a great view around the perimeter of the space. It's almost like you're up in a tree house. There's a lot of trees around, so we didn't want to block that view in any way. One thing that we did is, do you see here where this drapery panel is between two windows? That panel hides the wall that was there. So that's another element. People say a lot of times, I don't want to cover up my view, but if we put a panel over the wall gap, then it makes it feel like one big window. It creates the optical illusion that it's one big window. So that's always helpful as well. And then we added some more seating so that you could see outside here. And there's 3 dining tables at the back that can seat a lot of people. Lots of mid-level lighting. You see all this row of floor lamps on the left. So lots of mid-level lighting here, chandeliers across the back, and then 3 more chandeliers across the middle of the space. It's just a very large space. Okay, here's an example of using a highlight that's not a real expensive thing to do that you could do to your own bathroom at home if you would like to. So when you walk into this bathroom, the floor was fine, the cabinet was fine, they weren't crazy about this particular sink, but the focal wall is that toilet tissue wall. So we wanted to do something more dramatic here. So here's the after. So just tiling that one wall all the way to the ceiling, picking something really cool and dramatic and eye-catching and colorful was fun in this case. This was a stained concrete floor, which we left. The orange color was complementary to this turquoise color that we chose, and so that's why we chose that color of tile. We changed the sink. It's called a vessel sink, and this is another thing to be really cautious about with vessel sinks. They are not conducive to washing your face, brushing your teeth. I don't recommend them anywhere except in a powder bath because, you know, things get all around the bottom of them. They're great for washing your hands, but that's about it. So I recommend only using those in that space. We did a different mirror here in this case, a really tall mirror to go close to the ceiling. Accessories are different, so just freshening. Okay, so now I want to show you just some design styles so that you sort of get the terminology as you're looking and as you're trying to put things together about what goes together. So transitional is the first one. Transitional is a blend of traditional and modern elements together. So if your architecture of your house or your property is very, very traditional, let's say you have, you know, an iron door and it looks very old world and it's very European looking, then we don't necessarily want to go super modern on the inside because that juxtaposition is just too much. It's just jarring to the senses. But we could go transitional and bring some modern elements in and some traditional elements in. So in this case, you can see that the side chairs are pretty modern, but the end chairs, the host and hostess chairs, are, you know, more in between. They could go traditional, they could go modern. The light fixture is extremely modern. The draperies are maybe a little bit more traditional. The shelving unit is pretty modern. Some of the accessories are modern and some are traditional. So that blend is what we're seeing in many cases. And again, this has that brush gold that we're still liking. This plum purpley color is always pretty. It looks beautiful with taupe. It looks great with the gold, white accents. That's a real pretty color palette. Okay, here's another one. And this is another example of painted cabinets, just so you can see how those look. This is a really dark gray. I think this one was probably called iron ore, which is a really dark gray. But this is an example of a female that lives alone, and she wanted just these hits of this hot pink, which is perfect just for an inviting, friendly, feel. So you see the back of this chair is relatively traditional with this Baroque pattern on it, but the rug is very modern. So you can mix those elements together. Just be cautious of how you do it. Be careful with even mixing patterns and things like that. So do you see how the rug has a very large scale print? The back of the chair is a more mid-scale print. And then the front of the console is a much smaller print. That looks balanced together. We have something large, small, and medium. Okay, so let's look at this one. This is another one of those Sputnik lights that I was mentioning that has that starburst effect. And in this case, some very traditional pieces. I mean, the chairs are very traditional. The sofa is relatively traditional too. The table is kind of, mid-century modern. The mirror, I mean, not the mirrors, the art is very modern, and the light fixture is very modern. So that mixture, looks nice together. We are also mixing rugs, different rug patterns, just being cautious of the scale of the prints and what you see. Like for instance, when I do an entry rug, when you first come into the house, I think you always need a rug there that fills as much of the space as possible. That's the first impression. That's something soft underfoot, so it's inviting for your guests. I like that to be almost like a little piece of art because there's nothing on top of it when you do an entry rug. But when you're doing a family room rug, there's going to be a bunch of furniture on top of it. So you have to be careful about, does it have a center focal point that's going to throw everything else off if I try to lay the furniture out differently? So we usually do something that's maybe not a center design on family room rugs. Here's a bathroom, and this is a good example of, again, transitional, mixing traditional and modern. This ceiling is wall covering. It's a hand-painted wall covering that's in squares, and it just draws your eye up and creates some drama. Lots of neutral on the bath and on the shower, surrounds all of that area, but relatively traditional on the window treatment. This is the other little area of the bath. This was the husband's area, so we did one mirror for him that was shaped and fitted to that space. There was another mirror on her side that was bigger, but I just didn't show that picture. Okay, this is another transitional picture. We are seeing lots of this tufting still. So be cautious where you use it because it does look pretty busy. It can get overwhelming if used over and over again. Was used here on the arms of the chair, but it's in a different color, so that blends nicely. The white, do you see what I mean about how white will always draw your eye first? And your eye goes straight to that sofa, then it goes to that art above, then it goes to that light fixture, then it goes, to the rug, then it goes to that back wall of the dining area. So your eye's going to always follow white around the room, wherever it is. I do think the scale of these pictures is great for this wall. This is an example of using a really dark color as an accent color on some walls. This might be caviar even, the black color that I was mentioning. If there's not a ton of it exposed, it's not going to make the room feel dark. Do you see how this was just an outline of color once everything's there? The archway's huge, the floor takes up space, the ceiling's probably white. You're outlining around all this art. So it's just an outline, a strip of color that creates high contrast, which is always great. This is just a closet example that I put this in. This is actually my own closet, but I put this in because this was a guest room in my house. Actually, it was a home office when we first moved in, and I didn't have any need for that space, but this was right off of the master bath. So we ended up kind of moving the doors around and putting a door from the master bath into this, and it became a dressing room. So thinking outside the box is something we're always looking at when we're working on staging or when we're working with customers on their own homes or properties, thinking, what else could this be? I don't like having unused spaces. So if there are spaces that don't get used, what else can we do with them? And I like having really interesting carpeting in these master closets. Great chandeliers are always fun. We ended up putting a dresser in here for storage so you didn't have to go out of the space to get ready, things like that. Okay, now let's look at some modern designs. This is in that same space that the Foster family entertains in. And this is a good example of creating kind of a lounge. And we do a lot of these spaces where it almost looks like a hotel lobby kind of lounge. When you create that, everybody wants to drift over there with their glass of wine or their cup of coffee or their cup of tea and hang out in that space. We ended up putting a mural on this back wall. It's wall covering strips, but it makes a mural when it's finished. And we sell a lot of these. They can create so much drama on these big walls and really pull you through a space to that area and create some drama. Then we just painted the wall beside it a darker color to kind of pull some of the colors out of the mural. And this is another tip. If you're going to change paint colors, always change on an inside corner like this. That's an inside 90-degree corner. That's where you want to change the color. Don't ever change on an outside corner because it just does not look good at all. It's, again, jarring to the senses. We always want to change on an inside corner. Another trick that we use a lot is to paint the doors of spaces not white. So do you see how if these were white, the white would really come towards you, but now using them in this darker khaki, it pushes them away from you. You're seeing the white trim as a contrast, but the doors themselves aren't a focal point in the room now. They kind of go away. Here's another space. This is more modern. This is an example of if you have wood floors and you do not want to restain them, you like the color, or you can't afford to do it, what can you do with it to make it be balanced? And in this case, this client didn't, they were fine with the floors. They loved really modern. So we used this really strong, deep red, this lipstick red, because it was heavy enough and strong enough to contrast and balance with this floor. We also used black, which always helps. The big chandelier, you know, in silver. Do you see how, again, these windows were really low in relation to the ceiling? And most people would come in and put window treatments right above those windows. But when you go all the way up, it really draws the eye up. And then we put this big giant mirror. This mirror was like 5 or 6 feet long in this space to fill it up. Here's another example of modern. We're seeing more and more painted paneling. Even in new construction, they're putting paneling back in now, but they're painting it. It's not the stain paneling that we're used to seeing from years ago. So that you can get a lot of architectural detail. It's all one color, you know, it's not highlighted in any way, but a lot of architectural detail and 3D feeling by painting paneling. Do you see how even the crown molding, everything is the same. It's all the same color. So I think that's super pretty. This finish that's on here is like a satin finish for the paint. We always want flat finish on the walls. And so many people ask me, well, it's not washable and it doesn't wear that well. Well, it just looks the best. If you're asking what looks the best, then flat finish on the walls is what we want. We don't want any shine coming off of the walls if they're sheetrock. Sorry, I should have clarified that. If they're sheetrock, for walls, we want them flat. If it's anything made of wood, we want it either satin or semi-gloss or high gloss. You could go high gloss too. Just a little bit harder to maintain. So in this case, it was satin. I can tell by the finish on this one, but flat on sheetrock. Here's another one of those kind of Sputnik light fixtures. This has some of that blue that we were looking at in the floor, golds here as well, cool sconces on the sides. Lighting has become just a very strong design feature in spaces. Here's another space that, again, using accent walls to create drama and define the architecture that's already there. So in this case, this was all white before, and it was just so bland looking. So putting this black, the caviar again, in some spaces helped. Using a chandelier that really dropped down from the ceiling to fill that void helps. And then kind of some modern, you know, furnishings in the space. Here's another example of modern. This is wall covering, just so you can see. This is a good example of something that doesn't look like wall covering, but it is. And it can create a lot of drama on a bed wall. Here's another really tall, you know, headboard that's upholstered. Here's that tufting trend as well, but you see how it's not overdone. It's not too much of it. It's just in this one small space. Everything else with it is very modern. We are still seeing furs and those kind of textures as well. This is a bath that has, again, a very modern light fixture. Painted cabinets, granite countertops, but very, this was a very large scale pattern of granite. It's kind of hard to see here, but a very modern look. Again, really dramatic light fixtures in this space and this lounge effect that we were talking about. The dark walls, again, that are paneling is always fun, and making sure you have that mid-level lighting at the correct height throughout the space. Okay, now let's look at some traditional, because there are a lot of people who love traditional. It's not that that trend is gone. We just do it really fresh and clean. So this is an example of traditional that all of the furnishings and finishes are a little bit aged, very monochromatic in this space. Neutral's always super easy to live with, very peaceful, little bits of the black on the pillows. The rug is very traditional as well. We like to put a rug under a bed that has wood floor so that when you kind of step out, you're onto something warm, and it helps with echo as well. Here's another example of more traditional.
Lisa,
Again, that tufting. Yes, ma'am.
the slides are going really slow. So like I don't know about everybody else, we're still on the bedroom.
Okay. So now are you on the next bedroom with the black lights at the top?
No. Yes, now we are. It's going really slow. So.
Okay, I need to advance. I need to advance sooner. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay, good. Okay, so we are seeing brick wall trends as well, and that's very textural and interesting, and you can add that to an existing wall. It's just, you know, a fascia basically that goes over it. But the tufting here on the bed and on this big ottoman makes it fun. It's all neutral with just a little bit of that turquoise accent. Okay, I just changed to the next room, which is a dining room. And so here in the dining room, this is pulling all that golds and blacks and ivories. The graphic print on the rug below. A lot of people ask about the size of the rug for a dining room, like what size should it be? Most of the time, you want the biggest rug that will fit, but most of the time, when the chairs are pulled out, the back legs will be off of the rug, just because that's the way the dining rooms are shaped and the rugs come in kind of standard sizes. So there is nothing wrong with that. When they're all in, we like the legs to be on the rug, but when they're pulled away, then it's fine for them to be out. Okay, the next space is a traditional master bedroom, again, that's got really interesting architecture on the headboard. The post, it's a 4-post bed, but done in a very unique kind of way. And here we have that paneling again, all around the perimeter. This one is stained actually, but stained really dark, kind of an espresso color. Mid-level lighting. Again, we talked about this is a good height for the lamps because the light will come down onto the laps of the people sitting there. We are seeing a trend in some rugs with the fringe coming back in more traditional applications. Higher end rugs usually have fringe because they're handmade and that's just the way they're made. But I know that there's a maintenance issue with that. Whenever we sell rugs with fringe, we always provide this little comb, kind of like a rat tail comb that is good for brushing that fringe if you need to. Okay, now let's look at the style called elegant rustic. Let's go on to the space to show you an example of that. So this is a vacation home, a second home for a family that's very kind of barn feeling. So we did stay really light on the walls to highlight the architecture of the stained wood beams. And then we added the brick wall in the kitchen and we chose, you know, that color. And again, choosing the mortar that shows off your brick, really staying kind of light, helps to define the brick and makes it more graphic. We used copper in this case in the kitchen and kind of as one of our accent colors. We also hung this big rug up on the wall. So if you have a huge space, a mural is one option, but a big rug is another option that can be mounted on the wall. And then some large scale art. Lots of cozy finishes in this space as well. Okay, the next slide is actually in my attic. We found a space that wasn't being used and we turned it into a guest room. So this is a guest bedroom and you see it's got the shiplap, which again is a trend if you're doing that rustic feeling, you know, that cottagey feeling. But we are seeing it go away in many applications and a little bit more modern coming on. But if you're going for that rustic traditional kind of look, then it's still a great trend. Do you see here how we painted the shiplap one color, the ivory color, but choosing a little darker color for the trim and the door just defines it and makes it kind of stand out a little bit more. You see the decorative floor, the tile floor in the bathroom. That's another trend that we're still seeing.
It hasn't switched to the bathroom yet, so.
The bathroom was just in that same room.
Oh, okay.
On the left. Do you see it? It's kind of hidden.
Oh, sorry. I have some stuff over that. Sorry. I have to
Yeah,
check.
okay.
There we go.
You see it there?
Yes.
Okay. And then this is my dog, Willow. I just thought y'all might want to see her little face. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is another example of trying to create high contrast. So the floor was just a brown wood, and we had the floor stained black. And this is not something necessarily that you would do if you're going to sell the house, but if you're going to live in the house and you're trying to make it look higher end, then it's a beautiful option. So staining the floors blackish is real high contrast. And then keeping the walls light. And then we highlighted this great architecture that they had with this arch wall with the black again. Used one of the really tall headboards, like we mentioned before, that are upholstered, and doing something at the end of the bed so that you can sit and put your shoes on. I always love something at the end of the bed if there's room, because it transitions from a headboard down to the bed, to the pillows, down to the bed, and then down to the bench, and then down to the floor. It sort of waterfalls down. And that's the way our eye feels like things are the most comfortable, is when we can waterfall down like that in a bedroom. This is a patio. So if you have an outdoor space, trying to set up different little zones is what creates a cozy feeling in these spaces. So in this case, we created a dining area down at one end and then a nice big lounge on the other side. And people will say to me things like the patio, is here, and then the yard's on the left of this image. People will say, well, why would you put those rockers where they can't see the, yard or whatever? Well, when you have a lot of people over, everybody just wants to sit down and visit. So you can move around spaces if you need to. We just want to sort of enclose these spaces so that people feel really cozy once they're in. And this is the same house that I showed you that inside had the light walls with the beams. That was the vacation home. On the outside, however, the door color can be completely different. On the inside, it can be one color, and on the outside, it can be a different color. So here we were highlighting one of the colors that's in the stone and creating drama with our trim color being this deep, russet color. That's just another little side of the space. This is another area that we created, another lounge over by a bar area. Okay, now I want to show you a few commercial properties, because if you have a business and have an office or know someone who does, that's just as important to make sure that the designs are great there. So this is an example of one that was a mortgage company moving into this space. This was their reception area where the receptionist would work in this little tiny space, and she would look through the window on the left to greet people. So here's the after. And so doing things that maybe don't show when you first come into the space, but whoever works there is seeing it. And then as guests are leaving or customers are leaving, they're seeing it. So highlighting just this little backsplash to make that be something really dramatic and pretty, I think is great. Using modern chairs, some modern art. You see the modern light fixture that's in the lobby itself. That's a low ceiling in this space. So a lot of people would just put like a ceiling mount fixture, a flush fixture there of some sort that was really plain. But in this case, we found one that was only I think this was maybe 12 or 14 inches long, but it's super dramatic and architectural. And I think that first 15 seconds of somebody walking in your space, whether it's your home to sell or a property, a commercial property to be a client, that first 15 seconds is about all you have to make an impression. They're going to decide in 15 seconds whether they probably want to do business with this person or not, whether they even want to consider buying this house or not. So we've got to hit them hard when they first walk in. Here's another room in that same building. Let me go ahead and go to the after. This was it was actually just an office that we were going to convert to their lunch space, their break room. So on the far left at the end, and actually my dad sold this property and he worked on some of the construction with this, but on the far left at the end, we had this door opening put in so it could go to a little small kitchen that was there on the other side, and it just opened everything up. This is another trend in window treatments that y'all may have seen or you may not have. This is a shade type system that it's called like a transition shade. When you roll the shade with the cord that's attached to it, that's mounted on the wall, the shade right now is striped but it will go onto the next one and it'll be solid. So it gives you the option of either light coming in or complete sun control or complete privacy. So anything like that that's multifunctional, I think is really fun to use. And you see how like these little chairs, these little ribbon style chairs, they look like, oh, that wouldn't be super comfortable, but they actually are. They're very supportive of the back and great for spaces where you want something super dramatic as your clients are walking by, but still good for your employees to be able to enjoy the space at lunch. This is also the same building, and it was the back area, the very back area that looked out over the street. And so the before had all these vertical blinds that are pink. And, you know, we definitely wanted to take those down and create something dramatic there. It's a long, skinny space, but I really loved the idea, again, of creating a lounge. So we did those same transition shades across the back that can be closed if the glare gets to be too much. And all the furniture sort of pushed up against this one wall to allow a traffic path. But if they have events, they can move the furniture around and create little loungy zones. Or if they want to do it for team meetings, they can use it that way. Here's the same building. This was the garage of this building. It used to be a residence. And they were talking about maybe leasing out parts of this, like making little offices and leasing it to another business. And I started asking, because they're a mortgage company, what room do you have like for training, like for events, for training your team? Maybe you could have realtors come in and do trainings here. You know, do you have a space that you're thinking of for that? And they did not. And I love the idea for the mortgage industry of hosting events because it's just great for everybody. Everybody needs a space they can go and do classes. So here's what we ended up with, which may take just a second to load. And so these are training desks, and they roll around and they can collapse and be stored. And all the chairs have handles on the back of them, so people aren't really touching the chair fabric, but they're comfortable. And then creating something dramatic at the front. Do you see how we use the black wall at the back to kind of push that wall out further? And then we put white on top of it to really highlight it and draw your eye to it. The TV sort of just disappears. Once the TV's on, whatever's on is going to show. But otherwise, it's really pretty just walking by, even if the room is not in use. Okay, here's a before of a leasing office at an apartment community. And the furnishings were very traditional. Again, we see this so frequently where people just go out to a store, they kind of buy a sofa and a love seat that look, you know, good together, like plop it in the space and call it good. And that's just not how a designer thinks. A designer thinks, we want it to look like this room evolved over time and it came together. It's not like you bought the whole thing at one time. So we're always thinking, what can we do to create high contrast and drama? So we did change this carpet. They had wood floors throughout the rest of the space. We changed the carpet to tile and then painted that back wall an espresso color. I think this was called Sable from Sherwin-Williams. Added the woven shades to create some texture and warmth. And then that same color, we've pulled it in the tables, you know, the side tables and the cocktail table. And then threw in this tufted, really dramatic, bright lipstick red sofa so that you're kind of drawn into the space. Neutrals everywhere else, the white on the lamps to draw your eye to those spaces. And then the two little tufted spaces that kids could sit and kind of enjoy for seating, extra seating. This won a first place award in an international design contest that I entered it in. Okay, here's the next space. This is another clubhouse, another apartment clubhouse in another community that they were doing a little bit of renovations to. They were kind of changing the layout of the kitchen. And so it was a blank slate, which we see sometimes in these spaces. So we were able to come in and do mostly neutral, but we used that plum or grapey color as our accent, which is fun. Do you see how, again, because the architecture is interesting, we painted that one left wall much darker than the other walls. And we highlighted around the fireplace. We added tile, almost like a backsplash tile, but all the way up to the ceiling, just in one section. So this is something that anyone can do in a commercial space if there's a fireplace that's on the wall, or even in a residence. If you want to take down what you have, you do not have to have a mantle. That is so yesterday. I mean, it's fine if you have a mantle, but you don't have to have a mantle if you're doing a more modern look. And we used gold as our big chandelier in this space. This won second place in that same design contest for the commercial category. Okay, and then the next one, I'm gonna go ahead and let it load, is another apartment community that this was their kind of loungy area of the clubhouse. It was attached to a fitness center, and it had these black trestle, railroad trestle looking beams at the top. And they were really unsure about these. They said, should we just take those out? They're not really structural. They were just put there for looks, and we don't think we like them. And I recommended that we keep them and paint them silver. So we painted them silver, but then we went back dark on the ceiling so that they would really show up as you looked up. And the columns that were there, because again, that's an existing architectural element, we highlighted with that same black so that they really stood out against the silver. New flooring in here. In this case, it was a tile that looks like wood, kind of a, reddish orangey color. And do you see how on the right picture we added the mural in the entry lobby when you came in that pulls that same color of the tile in so that feels cohesive. In the entry lobby, we also use the black on the ceiling with one of these little bubble chandeliers that's little glass bubbles hanging down, which is always super fun and inviting. We did a different tile in the entry to define that zone and make it more impactful when you first walked in. But we did use the same color palette. We used some ivories, we used this golden color, the black, and then added the turquoise as kind of our accent color as well with those same Sputnik style lights. This one won third place in that same contest. So they actually swept the commercial category, which was so fun. Here's another property that I wanted you to see that we see again very frequently, just dated looking, and this could be a regular office or a multifamily community, but very dated things like this.
Una soda para que se te sube el azúcar.
Need to mute somebody. Everybody please mute if you're, okay. So if you have a fur down in a space, this fur down is this piece that comes down from the ceiling on the left picture. That's a great thing to take away if you possibly can. There are sometimes you can and sometimes you can't, depending on what it is. Something may have to be moved up there, but if you can, it looks nice to take it away. So we did in that case and made this a much more open space. We also painted the trim black in this case. That's another thing that's sort of the opposite about what we were talking about before. Go light on the walls and dark on the trim. And in commercial, that's really dramatic and it can look super high-end and professional, and that's always fun to do. This is the same space, the other side of the room. And here on the upper left picture, you can see we took out that little pony wall and that arch. All of that wall was taken down and the kitchen was redone. So we took away all the upper cabinets and just left lower cabinets and put the beams in and kind of created some drama that way. Created a little small business center over on the right so that you can say on your website that you have that amenity as a business center. So we're always thinking about making sure that, we add elements that are going to increase the value of your property wherever we can. This is a bathroom before and after. And, a lot of times with these leasing officers or these clubhouses, people ask me, well, why should I really make it that nice? But that's the first impression when residents come in, either current residents or potential residents and the employees that work there. The leasing office can make a big difference in how the space feels for the whole property. It's like the jewel of the property, and it's the image and branding of the property. So we don't want it to be high-end if it's not a high-end property, but we do want it to look up to date. Here's another space that, again, has interesting architecture, the ceiling beams, but they almost felt like they were falling down on you when you walked into this commercial space, like it was going to fall on your head. And that's because they were just really dark. So when we put the light here, the light ivory on them, and then changed the studs or the screws and the bolts to dark, then it created interesting architecture and kind of, draws your eye up. Remember we talk about whatever's light draws your eye to it. So now your eyes kind of go up, but it's not something heavy going to fall on you. We left the stone the same color and then just added this navy color that's so pretty right now to the space with some mid-level lighting in the lamp, and then an interesting chandelier as well. Here's another commercial space to think about, and any of these rules, you know, you can use in residential spaces as well. This was carpet before. We changed to tile and put a big giant rug. I mean, you can see to the left of that yellow chair where the rug, you know, goes. It's really big all the way around that whole space. We also felt like these beams were too heavy and too dark. And I know some people love the look of dark beams because they think it feels European and it looks rustic, and it does. So it depends on the application. What are we trying to achieve? What's the effect we want? And in this case, we wanted it to almost feel like a cathedral, like walking and it'd be really light and airy as you looked up. This property, the residents are 55 and up. So we wanted to retain a little bit of a traditional feel. So we did this sort of outdoorsy, nature-inspired print on the chairs at the back. They have a beautiful view outside, so we wanted to kind of bring that outdoors in, but add some modern elements to it so that it looked up to date. So in this case, we added, you know, more modern art, the modern chairs up front. This sofa is gray velvet, real pale gray velvet, and then a marble top table for the in between the lounge area. We also took the brick away and went over it with this stone, like a stacked stone. And then the little space on the right is modern as well. Great place to fill out paperwork for residents or staff to sit and visit. Here's another property that's a fitness center. So this is the opposite of what we were talking about. This is where the beams were really light, but the ceiling was really high, and we decided we wanted to create high drama architecture here. We took out this little central wall, the wall that was between these two spaces. They wanted to create a fitness center with a little lounge in it for events. They said no one really used the fitness center much, and they needed an overflow space for events. So that's what we did here. We painted the beams dark in this case, and even around the fireplace, we painted the brick of the fireplace ivory to draw your eye to it, and went a little darker on the walls and lighter on the ceiling. So it's always that balancing act of what are you going for? What's the feel that you want? Okay, and then we also do staging. So if you're staging for selling a home, here's an example of a family room before, and spaces actually look much smaller when there's no furnishings in them. It's the opposite, again, of what you would think. So we want to make sure that we have furnishings in the space so that people can visualize how the space could be used. Like, where would my TV go? Where would we sit? Where would the sofa go? How could we make this work? It's such a, you know, small space. When you get the right amount of furnishings in there and they're to scale, it makes the space feel larger. So that's what we did here. The floors were dark, so we used a light colored rug to kind of pop everything. When you're doing staging, you really want to stay much more neutral and maybe just a little accent of color, but much more neutral. You don't want to have anything that somebody feels like, oh, I don't like that, or I don't like that. You want it to be so soft and, you know, unassuming that they're really looking at the architecture of the home and visualizing themselves living there. We don't want the furnishings to be standing out. We want the house to look amazing and feel good. So we used kind of modern elements mixed in here. This was a low ceiling height. This was like an 8-foot ceiling. So we needed to do whatever we could to make things feel bigger. Large art can make things feel bigger. Fewer things, but larger things can make the scale feel bigger and create the optical illusion of space. This is that same house, and this is the dining room before. And again, it just felt small and dark. And so putting light elements in there, again, we painted the walls light in this case, just trying to make everything be super neutral and light and airy since the floors were dark. Here's a kitchen, and just accessorizing very, very minimally in these kitchens and in baths as well. Do not over accessorize for staging or commercial properties that you're working on. That's one of the things that we see the most frequently is it's just like too much stuff, too much art, too many things on the countertops, you know, too many plants like on the floors and things like that around. So very, very minimal accessorizing for staging. Lots of glass. You can use a lot of glass in staging, glass tables, for cocktail tables or breakfast tables or dining tables, because it makes the space even feel larger when you can see through it, and it creates sparkle. So that's the other thing that a designer is always really good at, is trying to create contrasts and textures. If you have a lot of matte elements, then you need to add some sparkly elements. You need to add some shiny elements. And you want that to be a balanced amount between the two. This is the same house. This was the entry before and after. And it was so small. So what we did is we used a light rug to help with that dark flooring, added the little bench on the left wall with a big piece of art above it. But then right when you first walk in the front door, there's this mirrored cabinet. So the mirror, you know, makes the space feel larger, obviously, but it also bounces light around the room and makes the space feel larger. It's reflecting the rug. So it's just something interesting and dramatic when you first come in. Again, you only have that 15 seconds. Here's a bedroom example of staging. And this is where, you know, again, neutral with maybe just a touch of color is good. Very minimal accessorizing. I do like having the bench at the end of the bed because it allows them to see, oh, Mom, this is almost like a hotel. You know, we could fit a lot of stuff in here. It just feels nice and cozy. This was probably, I don't know, 60s or 70s home. And so the windows were really high and small. So we have to do things that make that feel bigger. Again, putting this big mirrored piece of art between the two windows. There was another window on the other side. Makes it almost feel like another window. And then here's a bathroom just showing, you know, the flooring wasn't great. It's sort of dated, but they didn't want to change it. And so we put a nice, pretty rug. We did not add hardware to the cabinets because in this price home, they didn't want to put any more into it. They painted the cabinets. And, you know, then just minimal accessories. Always white towels for staging, just white, white, white. Very minimal art, but, you know, the right size. Neutral colors on the walls. Here's a living room, dining room combo. And we see this really frequently in, you know, homes that were built from, I don't know, like the 90s to 2010 or whatever. There were so many homes that were built with this living room dining combination. So how do you define those zones and how do you make that feel separate? And, you know, it's just making sure there's plenty of walkway between that you say, oh, this is the lounge over here. And we don't even call them living rooms anymore. We call them lounges. This is the lounge. Let's go have, you know, a cocktail in the lounge, or let's take our hot tea to the lounge. And making sure there's plenty of seating for people. I always want to make sure there's a place to put a drink for every person. So can they reach something, you know, somewhere to put a drink? And then for the dining area, the more upholstery you can get for staging in a space, the better, because it's sound absorbing. So again, if you have hard surface flooring like this one did in the entry, then using the upholstery versus wood chairs really helps with that sound absorption. And you see the mid-level lighting again, which those lamps can be turned on for a showing, and it creates little soft glows throughout the house. This is staging also, but this was in a model home, a model unit. And so again, the glass, like we were talking about, you wouldn't have this in your own home, a glass tabletop, you know, at your kitchen or your breakfast area, just be too hard to keep. But for staging, you can do it and get by with it super easily. So we were using for, you know, budget conscious flooring, this luxury vinyl plank, still in this gray or taupey kind of color is good. And then mostly neutral, little bits of hits of color. For a model unit, you can go more vibrant. This is another model, and in this case, we used cobalt. The white sofa, again, is something you may not want to live with daily, but for staging, it's great, or for something that's not going to get used like a model unit. So the light color is really soft and pretty and draws your eye to it. Okay, and that's how you increase your real estate value with design. So I'm going to put my contact information on here, and we're going to go through Q&A if anybody has any. But this is my email address. You're welcome to email me directly. I'll always respond directly to this email address. And then we're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all kinds of places. And you're welcome to check out more of our designs at Landry Designs. So let's go to the Q&A.
One was our bamboo shades? Are you still seeing the use of bamboo shades?
Yes, we are seeing all kinds of woven woods for shades, not necessarily just bamboo. I mean, they can be light or dark, all kinds of textures like that. So even with real modern finishes and designs and things, throwing in a little bit of that texture, either in, woven wood shades or a really natural texture cocktail table or something, creates that contrast and textures that we were talking about, which always makes things feel more cozy. So yes, for sure.
One of the questions, and I think you might have addressed it already, she said she put it early, was discussing getting over the fear of painting wood paneling to update the home.
Yes. And we did talk about that some. And I think, again, men in general, they love wood and they love the look of wood usually, and they don't want to paint it and they're afraid to paint it and they're not sure what it's going to look like. But it's just not in style to have stained, paneling unless you're going for that look, that library European, kind of look. For most people, they want a light and an airy look, or even just painted black. It creates a much more modern look.
What color of flooring is in right now?
We are still seeing lots of gray, but we are starting to transition now towards brown again. We were in brown, for so long, and then we went completely to gray, and now we're starting to see things transition back to brown. So we're seeing like grays and gray browns and taupes, all that kind of color palette is great going forward.
Let's see here. A lot of thank you. It's been very fun and interesting. Lots of valuable information. Anybody?
I was just going to say, if anyone has a question about a project in their own home, that you can just unmute yourself and just ask it, and we can go from there. If anybody has like dated lighting, like who has, who here has dated lighting in their bathroom? One of the things I always talk about with bathroom vanity lights is we want the biggest light fixture that will fit in that space. Don't go for a 3 bulb if you can fit a 4 bulb or a 5 bulb light fixture above your vanity. We need a lot of lighting to put makeup on and get ready and make it feel, inviting. So that's another real common thing I see, is that people will put up a 3 bulb when they could have fit a 4 or 5 bulb.
Are there any software or apps that help you visualize that you would recommend?
We don't use those apps ourselves. I think that's the talent, the gift, the natural gift of a designer, is that we can visualize what things will look like when they're done. But it just sort of takes training your eye, like visualizing, okay, this is going to look like this here, and paint this sort of in your mind here and here. And that's what designers kind of naturally do. Sherwin-Williams does have a tool called ColourPop. If you want to look at paint options in your room, it's real easy to upload an image, and then you can, choose colors for different walls.
Anybody else have any questions?
Not a question, but I do really appreciate the detailed information you gave us, the visuals that you had to explain what you were telling us. Helped me a lot. I had never heard that the dark color on the wall made it recede. That was very new information for me. It was very valuable today.
Good.
Very worth my time. Absolutely.
Thank you, Judy. Does anybody else have projects in their own home that they're kind of stuck trying to remodel or figure out, what to do?
Yeah,
Happy to
definitely.
help
So I
with
will
any.
email you about that.
Okay. Sounds good. Did y'all notice that a lot of your lighting maybe needs to be updated just throughout the house?
Definitely.
Paula, did you have a question?
No, I thought it was very interesting because I'm trying to transition from old world. I have a 1-story Mediterranean stucco home, and it feels very overwhelming, but I liked your examples. You kind of gave me a place to go, or at least a place to start. Is there a place still for some antiques, or do they all need to go?
Oh, no, I think antiques are great to mix in. Whenever we do a walkthrough with a client on their property, we always ask, you know, tell me about this piece. Tell me about this piece. There are pieces that you may have that are very sentimental or that you love or that you picked up, you know, somewhere. We want to figure out, well, maybe it won't work in this room, but maybe it'll work in another room, or maybe it could be painted, or maybe the scale is off because antiques are so small typically. And so now, you know, with the new construction, the houses are bigger and the rooms are bigger and the ceilings are higher. So we are very honest to say, if you love this piece, let's figure out where in the house it can work. Maybe we need to put a giant piece of art above it to make it look bigger. Maybe we need to flank it with floor lamps to make it look taller. You know, there are definitely things you can do if there are pieces that you love.
I may need therapy to paint my maple cabinets, though. I'm not going to lie. That seems like a really, not sure that I can do that, but I get it. That and the gold walls. The gold walls for me can go. I just really can't pick a color. I'm really, really struggling to find a way to replace it. I cannot redo my entire house from top to bottom. I'm not going to take out my dark floors or all of my tile, and I don't know about painting the cabinets. I'm still a little stuck there. And then I don't want to take out all the granite to replace it. So I guess I'm struggling with the transition, or at least a few things, but your slides did really help because I could add some more modern elements, and maybe that would get me going.
Yeah.
So Paula, we just did our house from old world, heavy texture on the wall, faux stain, gel stain, and I don't know, Lisa, you may have a recommendation. We have found a very versatile paint called Accessible Beige by Sherwin-Williams that because I still had colors, I couldn't redo all of my furniture.
Right.
So we found that was really one of the things. I guess I have a question, like we've done slowly but surely each room, we're getting there. And then I have a dining room that I spent a whole lot of money on, a dining room table and hutch that I would love to get rid of. I'm going to probably get about $5 for it. So I didn't know, do you have, you know, what about painting the hutch a color, or, you know, I have a lot of blues now in the home, or what do you recommend? Do you just recommend getting rid of it and starting over, or is there ways that we can?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, that's what the designers will do when they walk into a space is assess everything. You know, if the scale is right and the style is still good, maybe it needs to be moved to a different wall or whatever, but maybe it could be painted and be great, you know, in the space. Sometimes you can keep the dining table. Sometimes you can paint it. Sometimes you can just get all new chairs and make it look completely different, or just change the end chairs to look different. And if there's something you really don't love anymore and you're thinking how to get rid of it or sell it, there is Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, all those kinds of things that you can sell things or donate to someone in need. And then you have that tax write-off, which is another benefit. So it's sort of like paying it forward, you know. So there are a lot of things that you can do. And most people do not do their whole house at the same time. They go room by room by room. And I usually recommend not to do a little bit in each room, to go ahead and focus all your cash, all your funds in one space until that's completely finished. And so then when people come over, you can say, oh, don't look at that room. Don't look at that room. Those aren't done yet. But this one's done. And everything's not half done, which makes your house look like hodgepodge. So just focus. I always talk about trying to start in the entry because that's where people come in, then go to the family room, then go on to, that's like the hub of the wheel, then go on to anything that's connected to the family room. That's usually the order that we recommend to do things in, where you spend the most time and when you entertain, where people go the most. So just start working on those spaces. The powder bath or the guest bath, I think, is really important because as soon as you have people over, that's where they're going. You may not go to that bath, but I think that bath should look amazing, like you're walking into a little jewelry box almost. So thinking through step by step, do a project, you know, every year, or a project every 6 months, or a project every 3 months, whatever you can do, and just keep working through the spaces.
Okay, one more question. How in the world do you decorate above cabinets in the kitchen? What do you suggest putting above the cabinets?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Any plants or any?
Yes, that's a great question because we used to do so much accessorizing above those cabinets. It was so heavy and just like stuff and stuff and stuff when Old World was popular. Now we just do so minimal. Sometimes we do nothing. If we're going really modern, a lot of times we'll do nothing. If we need to fill that gap because the gap is so big, then we might put very minimal accessories there that are very graphic, like oversized It could be a big giant box. It could be a sculpture of some sort. It could be a couple of vases. Think about when you go into a model home now, how those are decorated, you know, big things, fewer things, but bigger things. So I do not like plants and things up there because they just catch too much dust. And I think it's, again, bad for allergies, but trying to keep clean things up there that just sort of shed dust and are low maintenance.
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
So we just moved into a new house and just about decorating and like kind of rule of thumb for accessories. For example, we have a very high.
I see that. It's pretty.
That
Yes.
picture's probably 6 foot tall.
Yes.
And I just don't know if there should be more or kind of what the rule of thumb is beside it, or
Yes.
you know, I just
That's a
don't
great
know.
question. Yeah. What I would do in that space is I would put another piece of art above that horse. It needs to go all the way up, like, you know, not to break the plane of the angles, but to go up much higher. So obviously it's not going to be another horse. It might be something that's just architectural looking. It might be, I think you need to do something else with white in it though, so that it looks cohesive with that. Something else maybe with black and white, but at least white. Could even just be solid white, whatever you do above it. And then I would flank that horse with something. Maybe it would be tall white vases with nothing in them, you know, or tall white vases with bamboo or something in them that made it even taller. So very, very minimal and simple, but you need to fill that whole vertical space.
Okay. No, that's great.
That looks cool. Yeah. Love it. And then you also have, I'm going to reply one more thing. You also have those triangle architectural features that are on either side now that are created there. You need to put something there. You need to put a little something there, and it could be something circular above each one of those windows to fill that space.
Okay.
Yes, those triangles that are flanking the horse area now. Yeah, that's an architectural feature that is not being addressed right now. So I would put probably something circular there to just let your eye come down that peak.
Okay, I like that. Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Make sure we got all the chat questions. Okay, looks like that's it.
I don't see any others. Well, we want to thank everybody for Zooming in with us today. And if you guys have any questions, or, you know, Lisa put her information up, and if you didn't get it, just reach out to me or either one of us, and we'd love to help you or answer any of your questions if we didn't. And everybody stay safe and well.
Yes. Thank y'all for
Hopefully
coming.
soon we're out again.
Much. That was really wonderful. Really awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.